Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Blender video. This one's going to be kind of a weird one. So I worked on a new artwork. I made a time lapse of the process of making it, and I thought I'd watch it with you guys and narrate it and kind of let you guys know what was going on in my head while I was making the artwork. So this artwork was inspired by a very close friend of mine. His name is Majid. He's a fellow classmate, a fellow PhD student at UCSB with me, and he took his trip to Japan. I took this beautiful picture of a temple with Fuji, the mountain, in the background, and the whole thing is just a masterpiece of an image. I absolutely love it, and it inspired me to do this artwork. And I made it a little bit of a challenge for myself. I gave myself under 4 hours to do it, no external assets, but I could use add-ons, and I tried to make everything from scratch besides like the trees and stuff. I pretty much wanted to just do this and try to capture the essence of this image within a reasonable time span. So I just want to take you through kind of the image and how I went about trying to recreate this. So I'm just starting with this quick diagram of what I was thinking when I look at this. So this image, immediately, like, beautiful. You've got, the temple in the foreground, the mountain in the background, and the trees and everything. And it's really the composition of this image is what makes it so special to me. So you've got this, the spectacular mountain view, and it's how it's like meshing with the horizon and everything there, and it contrasts really nicely with the temple in the foreground, and then you have the trees. And so these are like the main elements of the scene, and I sort of focus on them individually as I try to reconstruct them. So focusing on the temple itself, right? It's got this very tall shape and these big, I forget what the word is, like a pagoda or something for this type of temple structure, but it's got this very recognizable structure, and I'm sort of outlining here what I immediately saw and would want to recreate for this. So there's obviously like the big roof panels, but then you zoom in, right, you see all the stuff like the roof, the tiling on the roof, and then the guardrails along the side. And so I sort of noted a couple things there that would be easy to reproduce. And then there's, of course, these little bells hanging around. I spent a little time reproducing those. There's this big spire thing up top. It looks like it's made almost of like this patina material, and that's a very important element to the whole composition. And then there's just the whole thing is framed by these big red planks throughout the whole thing, and the red is a very key theme here. So moving on from the temple, we've of course got next the mountain itself. So it's just Fuji has an unmistakable silhouette. It's got these clouds around it. That'd be really critical to add in the background, but really importantly, and this is I think kind of the tricky thing to nail, would be the haze in between the temple and the sort of the foreground and the background there. It really connects the piece together and gives you a huge sense of scale. And then in front of the haze, you got this like sort of grassy looking stuff, which is obviously like trees and forests, and then the little buildings. And I knew immediately how I was going to make those, but the really tricky thing is to not put too much effort into them, but making them convincing enough that they'll sort of hold up to scrutiny in an image. And they're kind of all over the place, and they really help with the scale. Like, you get a sense of how far away it is, and then the mountain is even farther away. And then once you got that, the last piece really of the composition is the trees. So there's this dense grass and shrubbery dense leaves and shrubbery right in front of the camera. It kind of frames the scene really nicely, sets the scale, gives you like this connection between the foreground and the background. And really, it's just a small part of what makes this image what makes me love this image so much. It's like a perfect compositional image, right? Like, it follows the rule of thirds really nicely, with like the temple falling on one third and the peak of Mount Fuji falling on another. And like the mountain and the temple themselves are like kind of, they're good comparative shapes. So like it gives a sense of consistency to the whole thing. And then the shrubbery in the foreground framing everything is just absolutely brilliant. So really, really like this image. Huge thanks to Majid for letting me use his image to make this and to share it in this video. He's a fantastic friend. So yeah, I'm just going to dive into the time lapse itself right now and let you kind of know what I was thinking. So like, based on that breakdown, you kind of have an idea of how I saw the image and how I wanted to recreate it. And so the first thing I was going to start with was obviously the temple. The temple is the most complex thing of the whole scene, and the little roof stuff is the most complex of the temple. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. So I haven't really made one of these in a while, and I wasn't sure the best way to do it, and I kind of ended up with something I wasn't really happy with. In fact, if I had to make a list of like my biggest complaints about this scene, it would be almost certainly the roofing. I just wasn't happy with the shape. I tried a bunch of different stuff. I spent a long time trying to figure out how to make it properly, and I wasn't really happy with any of the stuff that I ended up looking at. I tried looking at like reference images. It's like a very simple but kind of like a very elegant and weird shape, and it's difficult to make everything connect smoothly. So I ended up kind of settling on the shape I was mostly happy with, and I threw it in there, blocked out just the general gist of the tower. And then once that was done, it was kind of start trying to zoom in and work on the small details. So I first started by making like the landings with the handlebars and everything. That was pretty easy. I made everything almost exclusively in this out of like cubes and stuff, just because they're going to need to be a lot of detail because of how far away everything was. So I was just trying to get the simple shapes there, and I didn't have a ton of time to work with, or else I would have spent more time making like the planks and stuff feel more gritty and realistic. But yeah, so just a lot of throwing stuff together based on how it looks in the image and duplicating. So now I'm working on the framing, the big red planks that kind of go up the side of the building, those big columns, and just throwing all that stuff in there. The nice thing was the floors were pretty similar, but like different just in terms of scale. So I was able to duplicate a lot of stuff to make that work. So then I next tackled the spire. I didn't try to get it to look exactly like it. I just kind of wanted to capture the essence. And I think if you look at them like side by side, you can immediately tell there's differences. But I did think I did okay capturing the essence of the spire in the image. So once that was done, I went through and I finalized the mesh by basically putting the planks on the roof, like the beams that are holding the roofs up. That was the last piece. All this stuff is really obvious to see in the image, and so it's just a matter of translating it into the mesh. So next I started working on the bells. I think that was pretty much the last piece of the model that I worked on, but it was just really simple shape. They're going to be far away. You're not going to see them too much. But once that was done, I was able to move on to texturing. And so you can see I'm using Eevee for all the texturing, and that's just because it's to get the basic idea down and get all the textures assigned to the objects. Eevee is really nice. It's super fast, and it looks pretty convincing, and you can throw in some effects in there too, so you can see how everything will look. But I do end up using Cycles for everything just because it's so much more realistic looking. It gets a lot of the stuff that I want it to, that I would love Eevee to do, but it just does a better job with it. I'm sure you guys all know the benefits of Cycles over Eevee and the benefits of Eevee over Cycles, so I won't rehash that. But yeah, so what I'm working on right now is just trying to make those planks, and that was harder than I thought it was going to be. The red paint on the tower, the temple, it's surprisingly like difficult to replicate. I kept making it too orange or like not red enough, and so it was just kind of a mess. It was just kind of a mess at first, but eventually I did figure out what I wanted to do there. And then once I had the planks done, I basically started moving around and doing the roofs. So I used this like tiling I found on CG Textures. It worked well enough. There were a couple options I wanted to try, but because of the time constraint, I didn't have time to try all the options I would have. When I'm spending more time on a piece, I will try a bunch of different textures and see what works. Also, I ran out of credits on textures.com, so I was like, I'm not gonna push this one. So yeah, once I had the planks done, it required some weird UV unwrapping to make it work fully. But once I had the tiling on the roof done, I moved on to the walls. And so that was, honestly, I probably could have just left the walls white, but it looked really uninteresting. And even though that's how it looked in the image, and so I wanted to add like a little bit of like grime and like wear to it via the plaster. And I got that the way I wanted it, even though it just kind of mostly ended up looking white anyway. And then I moved on to the spire. I just colored that like a simple kind of like this bronze patina thing. And then I went back and revisited the planking. So what you're seeing me do here is I'm adding some sort of level of edge wear to the planks there. And that's just to make them look more worn and realistic. And I am a little behind in the video, so sorry about that. Okay, yeah, so once all that was done, I pretty much had the textures done, and I started moving everything into the big scene. So the biggest other element of the scene besides the temple is, of course, the mountain. So I started figuring out how I wanted to make the mountain. I experimented with the mesh, like the ant landscape tool in Blender, which is very powerful and has a nice little volcano preset. That kind of was what I wanted, but I ended up just like starting with a basic shape and then sculpting around that. And I just came up with a basic shape here, but I did end up modifying it even further later. So you can see that it's quite large and quite far away. And if you slow down the video, you can see like the distance is, a big distance, and the size is a really big size. And this is a lesson I learned from this short film I'm working on right now, which has a bunch of space scenes. And I spent so long trying to figure out how to fake the scale. And so I got some really good advice on Blender artists that was just like, don't fake it. Just really make the things the size are supposed to be. And so I put the mountain really 54 kilometers away from the temple, just like it is in the picture. And I made it really 4,000 meters high, just like it is in real life. And it worked perfectly in terms of like everything was so much easier, like the haze and all that stuff. So now what I'm doing is I'm just setting up the trees. Basically, I just use this new add-on I've been trying out. It's called TrueVFX. I like it. It's okay. It's a very powerful tool for sure. It has some bugs though that like kind of make it a little bit difficult to use. But overall, it's a really powerful tool, and I'm enjoying using it. I've been using it in all my renders lately. It's very good. The lighting features especially are really cool. So next I was moving on to the buildings. Really simple stuff. Also, I was running out of time, but really simple stuff. So I just made a bunch of cubes and rectangular prisms and put some building textures on them because they're going to be so small and far away that you're not going to notice. And I placed them using a particle system because I didn't when you look at the image, they don't look like they have any particular order. So I just kind of placed them a little bit randomly. And the big thing was not just having the buildings there, but also the trees there for scale. And this is quite challenging because I'm using this big ground plane thing to stretch all the way to the mountain. But I had to like carve out a piece of it to have enough vertices to work with for the particle system. And that caused Blender to crash, as you just saw there. So would not recommend doing it this way. Had I more time, I think I would have come up with a more elegant solution. But once that was done, I was pretty happy with it. Got some trees interspersed with them there to give them a bit of scale. I started moving on to the texture of the mountain. That was really simple. I just took a mountain texture and threw it on there because it's going to be so far away and kind of shrouded in haze that I don't really need to texture it that well. Like if you look in the real image, there's like no real there's no real discernible texture to it. And I knew I was going to try to reproduce that, so I didn't spend too much time on the mountain texture. What I did spend a lot of time was trying to nail the haze down. The haze, I think, is one of the most beautiful aspects of Majid's original image, and it was just so hard to figure out how to get it exactly. Now, TrueVFX is a very powerful lighting tool, and the haze feature is brilliant, but getting the right combo of settings just takes a lot of trial and error, and it's honestly quite that's pretty much how my Blender usage works, is just so much trial and error and all that. I ended up getting something I was happy with. I kind of had to lay like a fog down on the whole field to get it to smoothly transition into the haze under the mountain, like you see in the final image. But overall, I was pretty happy with how it looked. At this point, I was pretty much done with the scene. I just started tweaking textures and stuff and moving the trees around a bit. I won't show you too much of that, but this is pretty much just lining stuff up to try to get to look how it looked in the image. And even though I was trying to use the image as a reference, looking back, like even when I use an image and I'm trying to copy it exactly, I kind of inject my own style and everything into it. So the final image is like warmer, and I'll talk about this in a second, but there are some differences that I'll point out. So that's pretty much it for the time lapse. I did make a couple more changes after the time lapse ends. I basically just used I resculpted the mountain to make it look a little bit more like Fuji. I changed up the locations of the trees and everything and their color, and I just played around with the lighting and stuff a lot. So now I want to kind of take you through this side by side of the images and like what went different, how I feel like I can improve. So you're looking at the two images side by side right now, and I'm just looking at it on my iPad. And so I think I did okay capturing the essence of the image. Like you can see the tower, the mountains, and the composition I think is accurate. I'm really happy with how the mountain came out. Like the haze looks pretty okay, I think the buildings and stuff look pretty decent as well. So I'm fairly happy with how that shaped up. There's a lot of stuff I'm not super happy about though. So the first example I mentioned this way at the beginning is just the shape of the pagoda, if that's the term. I'm so sorry if I'm messing that up. But the shape of the roofs on the temple, I think with a little bit more time, and if I'd spent like more time thinking about it, I would have been able to get it. But I'm not super happy with how that came out. I'm happy with how the little planks and the walks turned out, and I think that looks pretty okay. I also don't like the texture on the roof. In fact, if I could just go back and change one thing about this, I try to make the roofs a bit better. I'm not super happy about that. But yeah, very happy with the mountain though, and the city stuff turned out pretty good. Pretty happy with that. The trees, just the whole image kind of looks warmer than the original. Even though I think like it's definitely evocative of the original, I kind of injected my own style into it with the clouds and the colors. The trees, I think I wanted to spend a little bit more time on, get the leaves looking more realistic and stuff. And I did add some stuff that wasn't in the original, like the birds and some fake clouds on the mountain that you didn't see me add in the time lapse. So there's like a ton of stuff here, and it was definitely an interesting learning experience. But having the time constraint really made me think about things in a way that I normally wouldn't, and it's something that honestly I've been using Blender for oh man, I've been using Blender for almost over 10 years now, and I mean, I think the number one lesson that I've learned in this time is like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. And I don't know if I would have been able to like attempt something like this when I was maybe even 5 years ago, just because like I would have been obsessing over all the minor details and it wouldn't have come out the way I wanted it, and I would have spent forever on it, and I definitely wouldn't have met any time constraint. But now, I not everything I make I feel like has to be so perfect, and applying, that lets me have a little bit more room for fun and trying to test stuff out and like, playing with composition like this. So I'm not 100% happy with how this turned out, but I do think it was a fun learning experience for me. And I like this kind of format, like just kind of chatting about what I was doing, and these kinds of fun like little challenges. Let me know if you like this stuff. If you do, I absolutely can do more of it. I love making these time lapses, and I love these quick stuff. So just let me know if you like that stuff in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to Majid again for letting me use your freaking spectacular image. Hope you're having a good time in Japan. And yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.